Listen, I was thinking that you and me should have a little bit of a chat.
The Boys is a dark comedy superhero drama streaming on Prime Video that's an adaptation of the comic of the same name. It focuses on a group of individuals known as the Boys that attempt to bring order and justice against the superheroes of the world, who for the most part only engage in heroics for attention and brand deals, and in general tend to be more narcissistic and callous about the lives of others. Now, when The Boys came out, many people would agree that it was a breath of fresh air in the superhero genre. When the first season came out, Avengers Endgame had just come out a month before it, and as such the world had been experiencing a wider range of superhero media that focused on the end of the world plots, more universal drama, and a more black and white good versus evil plotline. The Boys kind of took things back down to basics, focusing on a gritty, more down to earth look at superheroes that wasn't afraid to show some of the more fucked up uses of these powers, and how having all this power might get to people's heads. With the show going on for quite a few years now, there's been several different seasons and even some spin-offs. And in this video, we're going to be looking at the first season, the only season of this show that isn't garbage. Don't worry, I'll get onto that statement once we start season 2. The season actually did a really good job of demonstrating the fucked up world of The Boys in just the opening scenes. We watch as two kids wander down the street talking about their favourite superheroes, and during this time, Homelander and Maeve stop a armed robbery, before taking photos and autographs with the civilians around them. Now, this doesn't show the inherent malevolence of the heroes, but it does show the narcissistic side of them, immediately focusing on publicity instead of the wrecked van or the bodies strewn across the street. This transitions to Huey with his girlfriend Robin, leaving work and casually walking down the street when, during the middle of a regular conversation, Robin just disappears, until we see A-Train has run through her and left her body all over the street before running away, leaving us on a comedically horrific scene of Huey holding a pair of dismembered hands, unable to fully comprehend what just happened in front of him. This sweet girl is killed off so casually, so unremorsefully, so quickly, that the people who care about them can't even fully comprehend how these supes can just take away their loved ones like that. And as we learn later, they publicly and legally get away from all responsibility, and it happens all the time. Huey is just one of the hundreds, maybe thousands of cases that happen each year. So just from the opening 5 minutes with these two scenes, you get to fully understand the world building of this series, which I think is really good because it opens up room to allow the characters and storylines to get more development. Speaking of characters and storylines, the main story of season 1 focuses on Butcher recruiting Huey and getting the boys back together to start putting some serious hurt on Vought and the superheroes, with special attention given to taking down A-Train and Homelander due to the personal feelings that Huey and Butcher have towards the two of them.
I'm offering you the opportunity to get them that got your girl. What have you got to lose? You ain't already lost.
It starts with the two of them taking down Translucent, and then after recruiting Frenchie, they end up killing him. Shortly afterwards, MM is recruited to help run surveillance on A-Train, and during this they discover Kimiko, a girl that Frenchie takes care of and has some superpowers that helps give the boys a bit of an edge when needed. Although in the process of learning about her, their identities get put on Vaught's radar. Vought are also pushing to try and get their supes placed in the military to help overseas conflicts, something they achieve by the end of the season. The season ultimately accumulates with Vought launching an attack against the boys that leads to Huey and Butcher being the only two to escape. And while Huey decides to rescue them, Butcher abandons them to try and pettily hurt Homelander, an action that results in him discovering his wife is still alive and that she has a son with Homelander. The character with the most development throughout the season is definitely Huey. We see him after Robin's wake and how he handles the meeting with the Vought lawyer, where he's sick and disgusted by what's happened, wanting justice for Robin, but at the same time his anger and rage are suppressed by his mild-mannered nature that has been instilled in him by his dad, Hugh. When Hugh is sat with Huey watching the news report, he constantly tries to not focus on what is being said and be calm about the situation, with Huey even having a look of disgust on his face when listening to his dad's fence-sitting about what happened. Throughout this season, we see him desperately trying to move away from his dad's mannerisms and begins to adopt some from Butcher, quickly showing that he is willing to kill people he believes to be monsters, even if he has some hang-ups later. However, his desire to protect people and feel people's pain is a lot more important to him than revenge, which is why he chooses to try and rescue the boys instead of helping Butcher, and even manages to sympathise with A-Train when he realises just how badly traumatised inside he is, firmly establishing that he's just trying to make things right, not destroy everything that has hurt him.
This is never gonna stop. It's just gonna be more blood and awfulness.
This is contrasted with Butcher. At first, Butcher tries to be as gentle as he can when getting the other boys in, relying on persuasive arguments to get them all back together. But he is quick to show his more selfish nature when the time comes for it. He'll happily treat Kimiko more like a weapon that needs to be locked up for further use when she doesn't immediately get over her trauma and help them. He has no problem hunting down and killing Mesmer after he sought them out, despite the fact that time is of the essence and killing Mesmer offers no strategic value to the boys, showing he'll use any excuse to kill superpowered people. And when the boys get captured, his primary concern is whether Huey will help him in his suicidal battle with Homelander, not the fact that his men are getting captured and will most likely be tortured if they don't get rescued. This all accumulates with him acknowledging that he never really stood a chance against killing the Supes, especially Homelander. He just wanted to do one petty action against him before dying. A petty action that is robbed of him when Homelander kills Stillwell himself, meaning that Butcher's entire journey here has been pretty much pointless.
I'm just gonna hurt you. I mean, really fucking hurt you. And that'll be good enough for me.
We also have our third protagonist, Annie, or Starlight, a up-and-coming Supe that wants to fight crime in her local area and be part of the Seven, the most elite group of heroes. Annie has a typical all-loving hero vibe. She's someone who wants to help because it's the right thing to do and helps to make the world a better place, always looking up to other superheroes and what they do. She idolized the Seven and so takes some interviews in the hope of joining them and meeting her heroes. However, after seeing how horrible and cynical being part of Vought is, something even more exacerbated by her sexual assault from the Deep, the threats from Homelander, and Vought refusing to allow her to do anything without their consent, Annie becomes conflicted on who she's supposed to be, desperately trying to push down her more optimistic side to fit into this new world she was desperate to join, especially after Huey betrays her. But after a small pep talk from Maeve, she decides to stay true to herself, helping Huey and saving A-Train from dying, refusing to go down the path that the other two protagonists have gone.
Like you said, I'm a fucking superhero.
So here you have three main protagonists who at some point this season are all depicted with pretty much the same problem, being people who have become cynical and vengeful at the world around them. But due to the great writing and firm characterization, they don't feel too similar, and in fact their different levels of cynicism helps to provide a nice contrast of vengeance, justice and oppression in the story.
Mallory's right. You're just gonna drag us all down with you. Not me. Not anymore.
And then you have Homelander, an unstoppable force that's self-centered, self-serving, and completely egotistical. The first episode does a fantastic job of depicting him as this Superman-type figure, stopping the bad guys and saving the day, only to kill a mayor, his kid, and everyone else on the plane when said mayor threatens him and Vaught's existence, casually watching the aircraft full of people explode and crash into the ocean. Homelander comes across as more of an entitled child throwing a tantrum when things don't go his way, and he sometimes comes across as a dumbass who fucks up very simple things, yet we also see underneath his impulsive decision there's actually quite a tactical, cunning genius. Someone who is more than capable of manipulating a tragedy to serve his own agenda, and immediately starts to find ways to hunt down the boys when the rest of Vought doesn't seem too fussed about them. He's also been able to conjure up several different superpowered beings across the world to sow chaos, which helps Vought, and therefore himself, to spread their power further. But we also see that despite how despicable he is severely fucked up and suffers from a lot of psychological problems, which we see through his flashbacks and his milk and mommy fetish towards Stillwell, allowing us to have some sympathy while still condemning his actions. While Homelander might be the ultimate big bad and the thing that ultimately drives the plot forward, you also have A-Train as a secondary antagonist. He helps with Homelander's plan to spread Compound V across the world. He has zero self-awareness of how his actions have consequences, and ultimately he is just trying to pursue his own greatness over anything else, desperate to prove his worth. Being the main focus of Huey's rage, it's easy to hate him, but throughout the season we see glimpses under the mask and discover why he's done what he's done. Ultimately, he just cares about being appreciated, not just by the fans, but by the rest of the Seven. And he is well aware that speedster Supes burn out quite quickly, his story being a well-made analogy about the horrible attitudes and actions athletes develop after abusing drugs throughout their career.
I'm gonna be a freak show, like Ben Johnson racing against horses.
These are arguably the 5 main characters of this season, but the rest of the cast are just as important. has both a strong sense of justice and a strong love for his family, and hates when people try and bullshit him, being the most well-intentioned member of the boys. Unfortunately, his well-intentions are a conflicting nature in his life, and despite the love for his family, he ultimately risks their lives in trying to make the world a better place. He also has a more constructed and ordered lifestyle, preferring well-made, thought-out plans over disorganized mess, having a OCD lifestyle that heavily clashes with Frenchie's more chaotic nature.
Well, if you and Monique have something so pure, why are you lying to her about where you are?
Speaking of which, Frenchie has a very over-the-top, quirky, borderline psychotic personality to him that comes in vital for the boys, having black market connections and off-the-wall thinking that helps give the boys an edge. He also has a very risk-prone personality associated with him, and while it can lead to some positives, such as being nice towards Kimiko which convinces her to join the boys, it is mentioned several times in the past this has fucked them over, to disastrous results so bad that doesn't want to work with him anymore.
My father was a bipolar. One night when I was 10, he tried to smother me with a Hello Kitty duvet.
Kimiko is by far the major character that is simultaneously really unique, but also doesn't really get a lot of time to shine. She is from one of the terrorist groups that Homelander has been giving Compound V to, and she was smuggled into the US to be experimented on, with the experiments giving her superpowers, and after Frenchie treats her well, she ends up joining the boys to help stop Vought. However, as she doesn't really have a way to talk to people properly, she's more of a plot device than a character, as she spends most of her screen time being held captive or being used to help get the team out of a tricky situation.
You're not a bad person. Just a scared one.
On the less heroic side of the spectrum, we have, ironically, the superheroes of Vought, with the ones receiving the most character focus being the Deep, Translucent, Mesmer, Popclaw and Maeve. The Deep is another self-centered asshole who decides to use his powers to sexually manipulate women, and combine that with the fact he has no problems having sex with aquatic animals, he comes across as a complete sex pervert that ultimately causes his own downfall when someone finally stands up to him. He helps provide a lot of the comedy on the Vought side of things, but he also comes across as a strangely tragic figure towards the end of the season, having lost his career, his home, his connections, and combined with the fact that he gets sexually assaulted towards the end but just lets it happen, deliberately choosing to feel the pain his victims felt, a new sense of depth seems to be coming from the character. It doesn't stick, but I'm not going to have a go at this season for what others fuck up.
You know, I'm seriously leaving, Jeff. Fuck Ohio.
Translucent mostly serves as the starter villain for the boys, being sent to silence Huey and then getting captured by the boys thanks to the ingenuity of Huey and Butcher. He's a bit perverted but also quite intelligent, seemingly keeping track of the financial profits for the group as well as giving insight into how Homelander works. His death is used not just to cement Huey officially joining the boys in their fight, but shows that even supes with reputations as being nearly unstoppable can be taken down, causing fear for Vought and helps to recruit back into the field. But on the flip side, later talks about him also helps to establish that these supes are still people, and learning that Translucent had a family who miss him hits Huey hard, and makes him reconsider his approach to just offing superheroes, separating him from Butcher.
You'll be glancing over your shoulder your whole life till they find you, which they will.
Popclaw is an interesting example as she's one of the few supes in the show that aren't complete assholes, being more like Starlight than the other heroes. She struggles with her place in life after her group got disbanded, her career is stagnating after a drug scandal, and the fact that she cannot make her relationship with A-Train public really hits her. Something made even worse when he publicly announces he's single. Her killing an innocent isn't just something casually done and then forgotten about, she is absolutely horrified by her mistake, which leads to her being very easily manipulated by the boys when they offer to help. Popclaw is Huey's first real taste of manipulation and using someone to accomplish his goal, with her death deeply haunting him and making him realise not only how close he is to being A-Train, but also Butcher, paths he really doesn't want to go down.
You ran through a girl, baby. It's not what I would call control.
On a similar level, Mesmer is the opposite of Popclaw. Both were in teenage kicks, but while Popclaw seems to have stayed true to herself despite her career slump, Mesmer is the exact opposite, desperate for his career to kick back off to the point that he neglected his daughter to try and do so. He helps the boys to find out about Kimiko's background for the chance to have another chance with his daughter, but despite being given his daughter back, he once again abandons her and double crosses the boys in a chance to help with his soup career by selling them out to Homelander, causing them to become wanted criminals, making them lose the element of surprise and having to waste time trying to protect their families. His death is also used to highlight just how unhinged Butcher is, and the amount of risks he'll take just to kill a soup.
Low 5 figures would be fine. I just want to be one of the good guys again.
And finally you have Maeve, and while most of these soups in the show do evil things because they're immoral, psychotic narcissists who just want fame and glory, Maeve is an ass because she's become so depressed and cynical about being a soup that she doesn't know how else to function. She watches Homelander kill a plane full of people and she just drinks until she can put it out of her mind. However, she isn't heartless, defending Starlight when it seems like Homelander is going to harm her, and encourages her to not lose sight of who she is, encouraging Annie to just be herself instead of giving into the cynicism like she did.
Everyone always asks, what's our special weakness? It's people. The people we care about.
The last two major characters are Stillwell and Rayna, who are two sides of the same coin, with Stillwell desperately trying to push legislation to give Vought more power and cover up their fuck-ups, while Rayna is trying to limit them and cover up the fuck-ups of Butcher and the boys. On top of this, they also function to give exposition about the backgrounds of Butcher and Homelander, helping to give these characters more depth and increase their rivalry. You also have a bunch of smaller characters that don't really have a lot of screen time, but still manage to push the plot forward and in some case add to the world building, such as Mallory, Black Noir and Ezekiel. Overall, the characters are pretty memorable and most importantly, they're consistent. The themes and politics of the show are also a lot more detrimental to both sides of the political spectrum, something that you're going to see vanish in the later seasons. If anything, it's less of a criticism of the politics themselves and more how those in positions of power, such as corporations, will manipulate them for franchises and money, hypocritically pandering to opposite ideals and markets to maximize profits. Much like most left-wing pandering companies, Vought preaches the importance of equality only to allow the men to sexually assault the female superhero members. And they will also disparage against the LGBT people like Maeve, who is forced to appear as heterosexual due to the publicity with Homelander. On the flip side of this, they also try and appeal to the right-wing side, for example through Christianity and family values. But these members also engage in homosexual acts and hedonistic lifestyles that the Bible doesn't permit. Vought isn't really a company that stands for anything, willing to pander to any message to any potential customer to earn more than their competition and grow its interests, regardless of how many people get fucked over in the process. You can also apply these reasonings as critiques of the fakeness of celebrity culture in modern society, with a lot of celebrities coming across as fake, corporate and self-centered to the general public, desperate to do anything that will get them attention even if it means hiding who they really are for appreciation by random strangers they have no personal connection to. Their lack of morality and their ability to make their problems disappear through money and influence also brings to mind the likes of people like Jeffrey Epstein and Jimmy Savile, rich celebrities that use their wealth and power to abuse those under their influence and get away with it, which I guess when it comes to characters like Robin could also be a critique of the failure of the justice system as well. The final thing I want to talk about in a bit of detail is the use of action and gore. There's always plenty of gore throughout the show, but in the later seasons it comes across as just a tool designed to shock the audience and add gross comedy. But in the first season it's a lot more reserved and used for more plot reasons, which I much prefer. Yeah, there's a main character that walks around with his dick out constantly, but that's excusable by the fact that he needs to be naked in order for his powers to work effectively. And towards the end of his appearances, it's more his personality and attempts to break Huey that I remember about him. Yeah, we see people get violently exploded, but it's usually either to progress the story and highlight the true depravity of these soups, or to highlight the more brutal methods of the boys, especially Butcher, and how far they're willing to go to take down the soups. I feel like after this season the gore nudity just keeps trying to push things further for no actual reason but just because it can. Usually as either a cheap joke or a cheap shock moment that's then moved on from and no real importance to the story is ever brought to it again. Obviously I don't think this season is flawless, and while most are small, such as the little continuity issues, there are two flaws that stick in my mind that still bug me to this day, one of which I've already talked about previously. The first main issue I have is the fact that the history of the world and the interesting historical figures don't really seem to be a thing. Yes, in season 2 and 3 it's established that there are soups who were fought during the wars, and obviously in the present day there's big action franchises and events for them, as well as a desire to get soups into the military contracts, but that's about it to be honest. There's no other world changing events or figures that are really highlighted until it's convenient for the later seasons. There's no real superhero politicians that we learn about that tried to push things in favour of their supremacy, or any sort of terrorist events that happen due to people with powers going crazy. There's nothing really. History just seems to have gone on pretty much like it did in our world, and it's a problem that's just highlighted even more in season 2 when they start singing "We Didn't Start the Fire," a song that talks about noticeable events and people before 1989, and the version in the show is just exactly the same as our version, despite the fact that Soups would have had a massive monumental impact on the world. For the second issue, one of the things I like about the show is its attempts to demonstrate how soup powers would work with realistic physics, but the use of super speed is pretty much fucked from the get-go whenever it's needed to justify regular people surviving it. Towards the end, after Butcher sets the giant cluster of C4 off, we see the light engulf him and he's still just stood there, which means that Homelander somehow managed to move at the speed of light and move Butcher out of the house to safety. The first big death scene of this show showed us what happened when high speed collides with regular people. So seeing the final scene of the series show that Soups can just collide at high speeds with people and leave them absolutely fine kind of shows they'll completely change these stakes and give people plot armor for the sake of doing something cool or pushing the story they want to push instead of what realistically should happen based on its own rules. A-Train is also going to get this a lot in the later seasons, where sometimes his powers don't kill people and then sometimes they can. It's a bit inconsistent really. Overall, the first season of The Boys has a lot to say about celebrity culture and corporate consumerism and monopolization. It has some interesting characters that have a lot of believable arcs. Streaming services were only just starting to kick off really, and this was one of their first big projects, so it was nice to see the CGI stand up. There's a lot of interesting and creative fight scenes. The music just slides in good and it manages to pace itself really well. It doesn't really feel like they rush anything or leave any dangling side plot threads that take ages to conclude. And yeah, I would say that this season is pretty good. And I remember when it came out, I looked forward for the future of this show and to see what the other seasons would bring. It's really just a shame that all the future of this show would bring is shallow writing, surface level political dunking, and Reddit shitposting. Thanks for watching, lads and lasses. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking, subscribing and checking out some of my other videos. Sharing always helps, and if you're feeling really generous, please consider my Patreon or YouTube membership. I also have a Twitter and occasionally I do live streams. But most of all, I just hope you had a great day and hopefully I will see you in the next video.